Well, good evening once again, everyone. We have round 8 of the TGP2 series, TGP2 season 30, apologies, here at the Red Bull Ring. We had to split the stream in two parts due to some technical difficulties in the previous uh, video you may have seen for round 7 at Paul Ricard. But we're back for the Red Bull Ring, which, as you can see, is it's a bit wet and drivers are finding it pretty tricky out there. Parsa is out of the session already at this point, and he hasn't even set a lap time. So we could get a fairly jumbled up grid here. And alongside me still is Johners. So hello, Johners, and
Yeah,
let's
hello
continue on.
again. Yeah, so with Passer coming up the last corner on his outlap, he just dropped it on the curb, spun round, and hit the wall at a pretty slow speed, but it was enough to rip the front right suspension off the car, concluding his quali session about 100 metres ahead of the start line. So that's a disaster for the Ferrari driver. He's going to be at the back of the grid. But on the other side of the Ferrari garage, it's looking good as Wet Lemons is currently and in an immediate commentator's curse, Wet Lemons was fastest and has promptly been beaten by 9 thousandths by Theo Hickman. No longer under a quali ban, he's allowed to go out and give it a go for the session, and he's gone fastest.
Mark Wemby then with a decent second sector, 300ths down on his previous best. And it's a fairly close field, well, between some of the drivers anyway. Of course, Theo and Wet Lemons are sort of in their own league in the early stages, very early stages, I should point out. Mark Wemby then round the final corner. Where will the Mercedes driver go? Of course, no DRS in these conditions. He does improve his time, but not his position. So Theo then. Theo is doesn't normally like the wet conditions. Doesn't tend to have great wet races. Wet Lemons, however, tends to thrive when it's wet on the track. But Theo Hickman then with a very solid opening effort. Let's see if that can continue throughout the session. I have heard though that it could reduce down to inters by the end of the session. We could have intermediate tyre running towards the end, so these lap times could be irrelevant come the end, and they
Yeah,
may well tumble.
just about tumbling times. Bazza looking very good so far. Almost 4 temps up in the second sector, so he's looking good to get into the scrap for power as it stands. He's just coming around the final corner now. He's keeping it nice and tidy, well within the lines of the circuit. Comes to the line. P3, he does take a position of Chiapelli. Doesn't quite get close enough to challenge the front row at the moment, though.
This is all about building confidence, and I think some drivers are electing to just not even go out there at the moment. Actually, maybe not. I think Mr. John tends to kind of do that anyway. But I think I think if I was in the session, I probably wouldn't even bother going out until the last few moments, because if it's going to get drier or less wet, then the lap times are just going to keep getting quicker and quicker and quicker. So let's just bear this in mind. A 14:3 is provisional pole when we're 4.5 minutes into the session. Let's just see what kind of lap time we end up with at the end.
Meanwhile, Daniel P. Wilnut has just gone within a tenth of Pearl. He's now taken P3 of Bazza. I think it's already starting to lessen, you know. I don't even think it's raining as hard as it was early on. So we might already be going down towards the intermediates. Meanwhile, Red Bull Kim having a bit of difficulty getting into the session. He's in the lobby but hasn't joined the session itself yet.
And then Mayor Quenby then in the final sector, rounding the penultimate corner. Where can the Mercedes driver go? Looks a little bit wide through the penultimate corner. Can he keep it within track limits? We saw Theo going wide and invalidating his lap. Mayor Quenby across the line. A very small improvement in time, but not position. So the Mercedes remains in 6th. I think that was M. Shep who just jumped up into P7. Indeed, it was. So we could see a fairly spread out field here so far, and well, let's see. A lot of drivers in the pits at the moment, having done their first runs. Wet Lemons is on an outlap. Theo has invalidated his following lap. So anyone on a lap? Baza.
Chiapelli is on the inters, so is Wet Lemons. Kaya being very brave, and apparently he's on the softs but still in the pits.
So this could be all about strategy come the end. I don't know if it's worth going on the inters this early. Even if it is quicker than the wets, I still wouldn't really bother, to be honest. But Baza then round the final corner. He comes, the Alfa Romeo, and improves his time but not position, which seems to be a bit of a theme for some of the drivers crossing the line. And Baza won't be doing another lap there because he has just invalidated it. Shep then around the penultimate corner comes into the pits. So let's actually just have a look then, because it is an interesting point. And you did mention Kai's potential tyre choice, yes?
Yeah, he is still in the pits for the time being, so
On
I
soft.
don't think he's going to change. I'm sure he's going to change back to the Inters. Wet Lemons is 7 tenths down in the first sector on the Inters, though. He has invalidated, so I think he went wide. Luca is next. He's just going through Sector 1 now. He's 2 tenths up in Sector 1, so maybe this is the right call for some drivers, but he has had a bit of a tank swapper at times.
As Mick Schumacher takes provisional pole position here with a 1:13.9 on the intermediate tyre. So it does certainly look as if the intermediate tyres are the right tyre to be on at the moment. Now, are these conditions going to be the best that we see in terms of lap time throughout the session, though? That is the issue. So I'm going to actually just get rid of the tyre graphic, because that's going to quickly become irrelevant. Everyone's going to be on the Inter soon enough. But Mr. Chiapelli then is flying so far through these first two sectors. So where will the McLaren driver go? He just has to keep it neat and tidy through the final corner. You just need to get a banker lap in at this stage of the session. Chiapelli then half a second clear in provisional pole, so 1:13.4, effectively a 1:13.5, but very quick from the McLaren as he invalidates his next effort.
And Cena just come around the last corner now. He's kept it valid. He's come to the line. It's 7 tenths, nearly 8 tenths faster, so conditions definitely improving out there.
Yeah, Cena finding a lot of pace. The two Aston Martins cross the line. Chris Johnson then jumps up into P3, and I think he's going to give a tow to his teammate Blair Grills. Blair Grills does look like he has more qualifying pace than his Aston Martin teammate, and I believe we have Wet Lemons on a lap as well as Jack Pearson. So Jack then around the penultimate corner, he's 1.4 seconds up on his previous attempt, just about within track limits. And Jack Pearson then over the line, no DRS of course. There we go. I think the timing tower was a bit late, as Wet Lemons then sets a benchmark time 1:12.499, effectively a 1:12.5. But who else is on a lap then? Wheelnut is now down into P8. He's on an out lap. Mark Quenby, who was fairly quick in the opening part of the lap, what can he do in this first sector? He's 2 tenths up on his previous attempt. He's kind of falling back a bit now, so he needs to get another lap on the board. Of course, Parsa, I think, would be extra annoyed now that he went out so early on wet tyres that, by the end of the session will become irrelevant. Blair Grills then jumps up into P4, so the two Aston Martins are both in the top 5, but we're going to see the times tumble and tumble all the time, as Daniel P. Wheelnut jumps up into 3rd, and there's an Alfa Romeo on an outlap. Theo Hickman then is the next driver to cross the line. Theo is up into 2nd. He's a good bit closer than a lot of other drivers to Wet Lemons, so Theo Hickman could very well be in the fight for pole position, as Jack Pearson then sets provisional pole with a 1:12.4. He's 200ths up on Wet Lemons. Just trying to remember my units of time there, as Mark Quenby then remains in P6. So we're getting fairly the times are getting more representative now. The conditions are somewhat stable. And let's see then who else is on a lap. We've got Shep coming around the final corner. I don't think this is a quick lap for him. It is not. It's a 1:22, so he may have been backing off to save up a bit of energy. And Chris Johnson then is coming into the pits. Blair Grills is continuing round, but I don't think he's pushing there because he didn't seem to be using any of his deployment. And who else have we got? Daniel P. Wheelnut dives into the pits. There's an Alfa Romeo here. It's Baza, but he's invalidated the lap. And is that an Alpine or is that a Williams? It's a Williams. It's the Williams of Theo Hickman, who's marginally up on his previous best time. Theo Hickman then, provisional pole. It's at 1:12.2. So laying down another benchmark. Now, will the track continue to improve? You'd imagine it will, but then again, if it rains more heavily, then well, the answer to that will, of course, be no. Mr. John has retired from the session. I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure when that happened, but Mr. John will be taking no further part in this session and will start at the back of the grid.
Just looking at Blair Grills, he's just improving. He's half a second up, so he could be challenging the front few rows here with his current lap. He's just got to keep it tidy in the last couple of corners. He's got an AlphaTauri in front, but that shouldn't be a distraction to him. It's Cena. I think he's just shaping up for a good lap. He's going to come around the final corner to the line and lost a fair bit the last sector. He's only gone up to P7.
Yeah, P7's not ideal, and it's also worth pointing out, I believe the race is dry. Let me just bring up the weather forecast again. Yeah, dry race is expected as I thought Mick Schumacher took provisional pole. In fact, he's actually got a 5-place grid penalty for illegal blocking, so not quite pole. In fact, it's just made pole physically impossible.
I think he got in the way of Daniel P. Wilmot as he was coming out of the pit lane there, and the game's punished him for it. And do you remember what I said about Kaya being a bit brave? He's gone for it. He's out on the softs.
Well,
I'm just not looking too promising.
No, it's not.
I can tell you that.
No, given that he's on dry tyres when it's a wet track, I don't know what other outcome was expected. So let's just have a look at the drivers who are actually going to contend for any meaningful lap times. Kai will have time to come back into the pits. Cena currently P7 around the final corner. Where can the AlphaTauri driver put himself? It's actually provisional pole with a 1:12.0. So either that's a fantastic lap from Cena or the track is getting significantly quicker. But Cena did look to be fairly quick throughout this session, so it could be a bit of both. So Mr. Chiappelli is on a lap. We've an Alfa Romeo crossing the line as Mr. Chiappelli invalidates the lap.
Just invalidated.
That's Jack Pearson on an out lap. Wet Lemons round the final corner. And just about keeps it within track limits. The Ferrari driver crosses the line, only moves himself up into P4. Wet Lemons in the wet conditions. He's normally a bit quicker than this.
Yeah, he's normally a bit quicker. Jack's just invalidated the tail one, so his session's done. Weirdly, Theo did not go back out for a final run, so he's not going to improve on P2. Luke is in, he's not improving on P3.
Oh, I still have 3 minutes left in my session. I should point out, yeah, there may be a slight...
oh, yes.
I'm going to have to explain it. Yeah, you may notice that my name is actually at the bottom of the timing tower. So I'm going to have to see how that's going to work. We may not have cameras that are actually pointing at the action at the start of the race, but I'll try to work the best I can around the issue. But final laps coming in then. Is anyone on for an improvement? I think Mayor Quenby's half a tenth down. It probably won't be enough for pole position, but can he leapfrog Jack Pearson and maybe Wet Lemons as well, and maybe Chiappelli actually, because it's pretty close out there. Wet Lemons himself actually.
Wet Lemons is just in front.
Round the final corner. Probably could have been a little bit quicker through that final corner, but Wet Lemons in front row. So that's, I think he'll be very happy with that. And Mayor Quenby up into P4. And have we got anyone else on a lap? Is that a quick
only Chris
Aston Martin? Chris Johnson.
Where
can Chris Johnson put himself? Qualifying has not been the session for Chris. Normally it's the races where the Aston Martin driver comes good, but can this be a change in fortune in qualifying for Chris Johnson? He crosses the line and he goes P8. So not really, but not disastrous by any means, but was kind of hoping he'd be a little bit higher. So, Cena then, takes pole position in brilliant fashion. Apologies, because I thought there was more time in the session than there actually was. I thought the track was still going to dry up. I did not realise it was actually the very end of the session. So Cena then takes pole position, and got Cena from Wet Lemons, Theo, Mayor Quemby in P4, Mr. Chiapelli and Jack Pearson, the two stand-ins, in 5th and 6th. Blair Grills is 7th, with Chris Johnson 8th. Baza and Wheelnut round out the top 10, followed by Mshep, Mick Schumacher, Kaya, Parsa, Mr. John, and hopefully not that driver in 16th. I will say, though, the I can only see race director at the moment, so I think I have successfully selected spectate.
Yeah, I do believe from my multiplayer experience, if you join a session but can't get into the race, it will normally just show race director at the end. If you're into the next race, it will show advanced and race director. I don't see your name on the loading screen on the side just now.
Yeah, so hopefully you won't see the Red Bull garage. Oh, fantastic. Okay, I'm looking at the pit lane. So I've managed. Okay, we're all back to normal then. So apologies for that. I probably could have got away with not actually bringing it up at all and just kind of glossing over the issue, but I did have to bring it up just in case there was a bit of a disaster. But I think we're in for a pretty good race here because everyone's on fresh tyres. Everyone has a free choice of tyres. So strategy here is going to be wide open. The safety car potential is high enough around here. We do often see a fair bit of accidents around here because it is a very tricky circuit to nail. Easy to drive, tough to master. But here we go then. Cena on pole position for AlphaTauri here at the Red Bull Ring. And we are underway, and it looks like a fairly solid start from the AlphaTauri driver. Maybe slightly better from Wet Lemons, though. And, I don't know why. I think that's actually my ghost on the track. But Wet Lemons there is in P1. Wet Lemons has jumped Cena at the start. Cena now has the outside line. Wet Lemons is on the medium tyre. Cena tries to fight it back. He's going around the outside. He's braking all over the curb. Can he hang around the outside at turn 2? He can indeed, actually. He gets a lot of traction. Little bit of wheel banging on the exit there, but Cena with that extra traction, I don't think Wet Lemons will mind too much because he is on those medium tyres. As Theo Hickman then is in P3, having a pretty solid start. Jack Pearson is in 4th. And is that contact between Chiapelli and Mayor Quemby? I don't think it is. Or maybe it was, but all looks to be well so far. And Mr. Chiapelli continues on in P6. But Wet Lemons then, he looks like he has a lot of pace despite the medium tyres, and it doesn't look like he has a whole lot of traction coming out of there. But Cena then just about retains the lead. And is this Theo going up the inside at the penultimate corner? It is, and Theo is spun. I think that was, again, the camera angle. Yeah, but that was optimistic. You don't really see people going up the inside there, and Cena is already feeling the need to go very defensive. So perhaps Wet Lemons had a dry setup on the car. But Cena then leading the race, but for how much longer?
Yeah, Wet Lemons on the medium tyres doing a very good job early on. I think the pace advantage he just genuinely has in the dry helping him. Let's see how he does in the rundown. He's going to use his ERS up. I don't know if Cena's also using his. Looks like he is. Is he going to have a look to the inside? I think he thinks better of it. Holds the position. P2. Just might as well just sit with him for another lap. Get the DRS, then just make the move.
As Theo passes me for P14, recovering from his spin. So that's another race for Theo where it's a bit scrappy. And speaking of being scrappy, Wet Lemons has had quite the moment, and he's taken another car off with him. Absolute disaster. Jack Pearson
VSC
is off the track as well. VSC quite rightly deployed. Not quite sure. Jack Pearson is trying to get his way into the pits, and he's got a 5-second penalty for kind of barging his way past Mshep, it looked like to me. Anyway, I did only perhaps catch the end of it. And Wet Lemons then makes matters worse. It's not a full safety car, so he can't just pit again and just rejoin at the back of the queue because everyone's going to be spaced out still. So this is great news for Cena then, because that's 2 contenders in this race pretty much wiped out as the DRS is enabled. And I think we've got green flag racing once again. And Cena then keeps it fairly level out in front. Chiapelli is in P3. and goes a bit deep into turn 4 and will lose a bit of time on the exit then. And M-Shep and Mr. John are up into 4th and 5th after that. Of course, some drivers did elect to pit. I think it's a little bit early to be pitting under a VSC, but I think I would have stayed out in this position, especially if I was, well, if you're on mediums, of course you would, but I think even if I was on softs, I would elect to stay out. But Mark Quemby then, looking like he has a bit of pace over Cena. He has closed in a little bit this lap. DRS is of course enabled, so we at the moment are looking like we're having a 3-car battle for the lead as Mr. Chiapelli takes the fastest lap of the race. So at the moment it looks like Chiapelli's quicker than Mark Quemby. Mark Quemby's quicker than Cena. And speaking of Mark Quemby being quicker than Cena, he's all over the back of him now, heading up into turn 3. Bit of a bump on the run to that corner. Cena goes deep, defends the position of who gets the better traction, and it's well, it's Cena. Owen with quite the amount of oversteer. Luca, I don't think, will be close enough, and Cena has actually managed to get the DRS, so he can do a bit of DRS trickery around here. There's a yellow flag at the final corner. Parsa has had quite the moment. Was he trying to enter the pits? He's respawned on pit entry.
I think he spun and broke his wing. He's retired from the session. He was also stuck in the pits for ages because he had to double stuck behind Wet Lemons. The same for Marco, having to wait behind Jack. So absolute disaster for both teams there. One person to keep an eye out is Blair Grills. He's P9. He's only just under 20 seconds off this lead trio. And a pit stop is around 18, 19 seconds as he gets a 3-second time penalty. I was going to say, when they would pit, they would come out right around where he is. So he is possibly in the scrap for the lead, although that penalty has cost him a fair bit.
Speaking of the scrap for the
lead,
lead,
like this.
Oh, Mark Quemby does not like that exit of turn 3, and Cena then with the DRS. Mark Quemby making him go the long way around. Chiapelli wants a piece of the action as well, but he's not going to get one. And Cena then brilliantly retakes the lead around the outside. This is fantastic. So if we've got a 3-car battle for the lead here, and will Chiapelli brave around the outside of Mark Quemby? Doesn't quite have the grip, but he's still sort of in it there, but he's not close enough. And Mark Quemby will take the position, give Cena a little bit of breathing room, but not a whole lot, because Mark Quemby is still within half a second. So Cena then is just about hanging on here. He does look to be the slowest of the top 3 as Mr. Chiapelli picks up the first time penalty among the top 3 drivers. And Mr. John's having an excellent race. I know I've said it already, but up in P4. But Mark Quemby then takes a lot of curb and he's spun and he's out of the race. Mark Quemby for the 2nd race in a row out of the session.
And it's a safety car.
And will score no points, and it's a safety car. It's a huge opportunity for Mr. John. Luca
made a move. He's taken the lead, but it was after the safety car deployment. He's got to let the AlphaTauri go, and he has done. That will this not be a penalty?
Will this work though? Because it's one thing.
Cena,
what's he done? Why is he got no wing?
He's veered off into the wall. He was on his own. He's just completely veered off.
That's a bit of an odd one. I'm now 8th, by the way. Somehow my car's still going around.
And Theo, sorry, no, that was your AI car. Okay, your random ghost car is just sitting behind the safety car, just chilling. A series of bizarre events just going on there. Owen losing it on the curb again, like he did in France. And then Luca making an overtake under safety car, giving the place back, only for Cena to promptly drive off into the wall.
Yeah, that's
this is
a strange
excellent. Who this really helps though is Mr. John.
Is he on for a net P2 here at the moment?
Well, with Luca's penalty. With Luca's penalty, it's a net P1. Although we do have a car going through.
We do
Blair
have...
Grills is pitted, so... yeah, he's on for a net win here. Although he's going to come out behind Kaya, who's yet to pit, so Luca's got a bit of a buffer at the moment.
Someone else who has yet to pit is a certain Red Bull driver who is now 5th. So it's a great race so far for Red Bull. 2 cars in the top 5, but Yeah, not quite sure what I could have done in that situation to prevent it once it happened. But Kaya then staying out once again. Will
And
he do what he did in
c-
France and Pitt?
can we have a shout out here? Because Red Bull Kim is a net P7 from 17th on the grid.
I mean, it's all action here. We've got Mr. John in a net lead of the race. It's a fantastic opportunity for him. Um, Although I do wonder though, the safety car will bunch up the field. Um, Whereas obviously the incidents beforehand kind of spread it out. So he will have the track position, but I wonder if in the end this will be good for him. But if Mr. John can keep it clean, there could be
Oh, and a penalty for Theo.
a lot of
And
points reached at
Daniel
the end
P.
of this.
Wilnut.
It's one of those safety car penalties. Sometimes they do stand because sometimes we do find that one driver is more at fault. Um, so we'll have to see what goes on there. Um,
Rather frenetic race so far, it has to be said.
yeah, a bit of a strange one, all right. But enjoyable nonetheless. No idea what's going to happen at the end here. Now I kind of have to. I just want while we're under safety car. Is my car actually like solid?
I do believe it is a solid car, yes. It's not ghosting
Can
like it should
I
be.
can I retire behind the safety car and not cause any significant problems?
I don't think you can join it, can you?
I think I can because it's coming up as
Um,
on. Oh no, because there's no take control option.
yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it's possible.
Yeah. Okay. So apologies for that. I was going to pull off the track in a gravel trap somewhere and then retire once everyone passed me. But I don't think I have that luxury, unfortunately. But Kaya then
What I will,
stays out. So Kaya's playing a
what I
good
will,
rear gunner game.
yeah, yeah, that's good news for Luca. As the safety car message is up that it's about to come in, Kaya would definitely be a wingman on the restart unless he just goes straight in the pit. But he's not the quickest of guys. Luca really backing the pack up as well here. But if Luca gets a good run here, Kaya just being a bit slower than the cars that are right behind him could really help Luca out here. Could pull that 3 second gap as he then runs into the back of his teammate. But Luca does not get the 5 second penalty.
So
As I do, yeah, I do believe for some reason when the safety car in message comes up, if there's any contact, the car behind gets a penalty, but not the car in front, unless it's an obvious brake check. So that's an interesting one as Luca guns it.
Luca
Luca is
Gunza and
away.
Kaya, I think, is playing the team game. That, or he was just incredibly slow to react. But Luca already has a 2 second lead over Mr. John, and of course they still have to pass the McLaren of Kaya. So Kaya then doing a fantastic bit of teamwork. So Mr. Chiapelli then 2 seconds clear as Theo picks up yet another warning in this race. Mr. John then has already passed Kaya, and Mr. John is now up into second. There was almost a very severe collision between the two of them. Bit of a lock up there from Mr. John. Looks like he has a bit more traction. Of course, he does have fresh tyres. Kaya has yet to pit, so he needs to schedule a pit stop at some point in this race. We've seen a good few penalties coming through here. He did mention beforehand that track limits were going to be a very crucial part of this race, and that looks to be coming to fruition at the moment. And Mr. John then doing a fantastic job, doing everything he needs to do. He's passed Kaya cleanly and is now up into P2, and now he just needs to keep doing clean, consistent laps to the end of the race. He does not have any penalties, and that could really, really benefit him at the end of the race, speaking from experience. So Mr. John then on for a very solid result, but of course we're only actually halfway through the race, believe it or not. We've seen so much action so far, but we're only halfway through it. So let's see what the second half of this race brings as Daniel P. Wheelnut passes Kaya. Kaya is now down into fifth. He may want to think about pitting at some point in the future. He's done all that he can do for his teammate. And Daniel P. Wheelnut then all over the back of Cena. And the more the cars battle behind Mr. John, the better it is for him. So
Yeah.
Daniel then not quite with the traction he needs to get past Cena. DRS not yet enabled, of course.
The problem for Mr. John is he's got a train of very, very fast drivers right behind him. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys who you could argue are quicker than him that are right behind him. He is holding on to that second gap over Cedar though, and is staying within the 3 seconds of Lucas, so really pulling a strong performance out of the Red Bull here is Mr. John.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out Cena is perhaps a little slower than the drivers just behind him. There's a bit of contact between Wet Lemons and it looked like Theo Hickman, and Wet Lemons then
It's in the
dives into the
pits.
pit lane. It's a bit of a late call, but you'd imagine he'll stick on another set of softs. You must have a significant amount of wing damage as Marco sets the fastest lap of this race. Cena now all over the back of Mr. John. Mr. John is already derating down the straight. So I think he used a lot of his energy to build up some kind of a gap, but I'm not quite sure that's going to work for him in the end, I have to say. That doesn't really...
I will say Cena's also derated as well, so they both burden up their energy. But Cena's going for it down the inside.
Cena goes for
Makes
it down
the
the
move.
inside. Mr. John not really making it difficult. I think Mr. John knows what he needs to do here. He just needs to keep a penalty-free, clean drive until the end of this race, and he'll have to just see where he ends up. And to be honest, you know, I've been in that position myself. Sometimes it is just the better thing to do. It's not always a smart idea to race whoever comes near you, because sometimes you are better off doing your own race and minding your own business. But Mr. John then, he's still on for a very strong result, because if you look at that timing tower, he picks up a penalty. Mr. John then with his first penalty of the race. So Cena is the only driver in the top 11 without a penalty.
There is some big championship news as well. Wet Lemons has retired in the pit lane. He will be out of, well, he's technically out of the points, but I think he will be put to 14th due to the second Red Bull. A penalty for Mr. John. That's very costly, but Daniel P. Wilmot has now taken P2 off Cena. And of course, he might have that 5 seconds removed, and he's right on the cusp of the 3-second margin to Luca. So it could all be very close still at the end of this race.
Yeah, Wilmot now into P2. Now you have to wonder how quick. It's actually, do you know what? It's an Isle of Man 1-2 here. It's a Manx 1-2. Luca is currently the top Manx man in the field. I'm sorry, I could not resist that one, but it is a Manx 1-2, and I think that's a title that Luca will be very pleased to have. And Cena then holding on to the podium places. But of course, he does have to build at least a 3-second gap to Mr. John. In fact, let's actually have a look at the penalty situation in this race so far. And I think Theo and Jack have 5-second penalties, which may or may not get removed. We'll have to see how that pans out. But Daniel P. Whelan has a 5-second penalty. Now, is that because someone hit him?
I think that was him and possibly one of Theo or Jack.
That may get removed then, so it's possible that Daniel P. Wheelnut is actually leading this race. I can't really go into the race director now because it will kind of disrupt what we're seeing on the stream. But Chiapelli then
just set the fastest lap as well in P13, so he's taken a point of, well, I was going to say Wet Lemons, but Wet Lemons out of the race, but he's got himself the extra point as it stands.
So yeah, not getting a huge deal of points for the Alfa Romeo team. Baza not really having his best night, it has to be said, as Jack Pearson picks up another penalty in this race. Red Bull Kim so far penalty free, as Daniel P. Wheelnut does pick up a penalty now, so it is officially Mr. Chiapelli who leads this race. In fact, actually, Cena is
right on the cusp, yeah.
Yeah, so Cena may actually still have, well, he doesn't right now, but he could be in contention for the next lead of this race. Fight for fifth. Theo Hickman then up the inside of Mr. John into turn number 4. Mr. John thought about going a bit defensive there, but Mr. John, he knows what he's doing. He knows he just needs to let these drivers go, because I think he knows he doesn't have the pace, because if he holds up one driver, all the cars ahead of him will escape off into the distance, and then suddenly you'll have a gaggle of cars behind him, and he won't really be able to take any advantage of the penalties ahead. But you know, it is the kind of track where defence is pretty difficult to pull off, and he does not have a lot of deployment left in that car. So Cena then still just kind of like 3.2 seconds back, but the thing is though, I think he's kind of being towed along by Daniel. I think he needs Daniel to pick up the pace, because if Daniel picks up the pace, then Cena could very well be on for the win here. But what Luca needs to do is not pick up a penalty like his teammate has just done at the final corner. So Chiapelli then, if he only has 3 seconds, he's still in the net lead of this race.
As you say, that has just ticked under 3 seconds, the gap between first and third, so Cena technically is the leader as it stands, but it does feel like the early part of the lap, the Mercedes of Daniel P. Wilmot is just that little bit quicker than Luca at this point. Then towards the end of the lap, it kind of balances back out. Luca takes a tenth or two, and therefore Cena, being on the slipstream, gets a bit of dirty air, pushes him back a little bit as well, so it's very, very close.
It's very close, and to be honest, he's actually kept it within 3 seconds this time. As I say that, it's not just outside of it now. Actually, no, it's not. It's still it's 2.9 as we cross the line here, and Cena, of course, does have the DRS. So Luca then, I think, is feeling the pressure. I wonder how many warnings he has as Mick Schumacher goes for a spin at the back, and I think Mick Schumacher. It looks like he did have a great deal of pace there. He currently has the fastest lap of the race, and he will get the point for that. There's only, 13 drivers left in this race, so he will actually pick up 3 points as things stand. As we have a battle between Cena and Daniel P. Wilmot. They make contact on the straight, not quite sure how or why they've done that, but Cena then feeling the need to get on with things. He must feel like he is the quicker driver. But Daniel has a bit more deployment. But if the two of these start battling, this is great news for Mr. Chiapelli, and some great news for Theo Hickman. He's now up into P4 after a fairly... he had quite an incident-filled opening part of this race. Doesn't have a lot of deployment left to defend with, and I think that's a story for a lot of drivers out there, although Daniel, has to be said, has been keeping a fairly good eye on his deployment levels, and he has more than a good few drivers in this field.
I just don't think Cena made the right call, because the gap is outside. It's only just about 3 seconds, and now he's going to be fighting on the penultimate lap with Daniel.
Yeah,
sweeps right past.
Yeah, I don't think it was a great call either. Now they're both slower now, which is just handing the time to Luca, and someone else who could do it being handed a bit of time is Theo Hickman. And Cena then, he will still jump into P2, and speaking of jumping ahead of someone, Theo Hickman with a very late, very aggressive move, but just about keeps it clean, keeps it all neat and tidy just about, and Theo is now fourth.
But that fight has brought Mr. John back into it, who just very firmly held off Jack for P6. It was a fair move to hold him off, and he's just closing onto the back of the car in front. So we're going to have a 5-car train on this last lap here for P4.
This is where Mr. John is right to go defensive, because you're at the end of the race. Even if the cars get ahead, they're probably not going to pull 3 whole seconds clear. So Mr. John then, what can he do at the end of this race? What can Blair Grills do? And Blair Grills will tell you what he can do. He can go around the outside of Theo Hickman into turn 3 if he can just about get his braking point right. May not even need his braking point to be all that good, because he has already got the move done before we go into the corner. Now, how is Theo's exit? It did look a little bit better, but Blair Grills in the second phase of the traction does look like he has a lot more pace. And speaking of someone who has a lot of pace, just as I was about to cut away, I mean, the gap was there and the gap was left open, and we've got a battle here between Mr. John and the Alpine of Jack Pearson. Jack Pearson gets up the inside at turn 6 and will get the position from Mr. John, but penalties will play a factor at the end of the race. But someone whose penalties won't play any factor is Mr. Chiapelli. Luca Chiapelli wins at the Red Bull Ring in spectacular fashion, just about holding off the charging pack behind. Cena comes home second, Wheelnut is third, Blair Grills a very strong P4, Mr. John an excellent P5, Chris Johnson is sixth. As we always say, Chris Johnson somehow ends up in the kind of top 5, top 6 mix come the end of the race. Theo is 7th, M. Shep comes home 8th, Jack Pearson with a fair share of penalties is 9th, as Red Bull Kim comes home in 10th. And did Theo get a penalty after the
he just got a post-race penalty? Yeah, a
Is
post-race yellow 10-second penalty.
not. Oh,
And
as
so
has
does Cena.
Cena. Okay.
Okay,
That's.
so Cena is P2, Theo is P7. So Theo is P7, Cena's P2. I don't know why they got two 10-second penalties. Well, a 10-second penalty each for the two of them. But I don't believe that will stand. So Cena's P2. Theo is P7. So I would ignore those two 10-second penalties there. And
Oh dear.
that's an interesting celebration.
Oh, what
The
have I
top
just
match man,
seen?
Lukacci takes the checkered flag at the Austrian Grand Prix.
Yeah, brilliant race from Luca. Did have to work for it though, because he did have to watch his track limits and keep the tyres and his pace all in good nick, and he did just that. And top Manx man, as we said. So it's a Manx 1-2. Has that ever happened before? It may have in TGP2 in the past.
Possibly,
But,
I'm sure maybe once or twice, maybe Luca and Dom in the past.
yeah, well, it's definitely
But
happened
it's
now.
although that was because of Cena's random 10-second penalty
Oh, of
post-race.
course, actually, yeah. So
I think
ignore that. It is not
it's
Manx 1-2.
it's Luca, Cena. Dingleby will not in third. Blair Grylls was fourth ahead of Mr. John in fifth. Sixth for Chris Johnson. Theo should be P7. Then it was M. Shep in eighth. Ninth for Jack Pearson. 10th for Red Bull Kim. 11th for Bazza. 12th for Kaya. 13th for Mick Schumacher, with Wet Lemons in 14th, with Maya Granby in passer, as well as Wet Lemons DNFing, and obviously the random Red Bull in 13th that shouldn't have actually been there, but the game decided to mess up.
Yeah, I should point out Spectator was selected, as you can now see, but because I'd entered qualifying, it got a bit muddled up. But anyway, I should probably wrap it up now. As you can imagine, Wet Lemons has quite the commanding lead in the championship. It's now 27 points, I believe, because he gained 26 in France. Just about remembered which race we did about half an hour ago. But I mean, that was quite the eventful night.
I think he's got a 28-point lead at the moment. He obviously will get the 1 point for 14th.
Of course, yeah.
For Austria, plus the 26 for the race win and fastest lap in France.
Well, I gotta tell you, it could have been a hell of a lot more. So Camo Babo is definitely not out of this, and it has brought other drivers a good bit closer to Wet Lemons as well. So it's definitely still all to play for. And any concluding thoughts, Johners?
Well, it was fun to be back at the commentary box. Fairly hectic couple of races, some good battles, and the championship is still very much on.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. It was some fantastic racing we saw tonight, and plenty of action throughout the field. And hopefully next week you will join us for some more of that. We'll have rounds 9 and 10 next week, and I hope to see you then. Same time, same place next week. Good night.